Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I'm here with...
Rob H. This is AV Rant, the show where we answer your questions about all things home theater and audio video. And in very recent news, as much as Blockbuster and other video rental stores have now gone the way of the dodo, so too have discs by mail rental gone that way as well. Up here in Canada, anyway, got an email from zip.ca, which was our largest disc by mail provider up here, and they are going out of business after 10 years. So that's about it for that
Don't you have
up here.
Netflix is just streaming for you guys?
Yeah, Netflix is only streaming and certainly doesn't have the selection that you guys have down in the States. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
they
it's,
pretty
it's
much have
starting to become
everything.
slim pickings for getting content. It's kind of like, well, we got Redbox, and we've got Netflix, and we have iTunes, and that's about it.
I sort of kind of hate Redbox a little bit because, it's okay, but you can only really get the new stuff, and then
Hmm.
if you really want something, it's a specific movie, a specific, like Blu-ray. If you want a Blu-ray, you may or may not find it, and then you have to,
Hmm. And I'm at the point now, if I ever want to watch 3D again, I'm pretty much going to have to buy it. So,
well, you and
yeah.
both the other people who like 3D.
Yeah, that would be the reason Redbox doesn't carry 3D versions here. They would not make back their investment on stocking those in the boxes.
Well, the 3D versions don't have regular versions on them too. It's not like you can switch it on and off.
Often not. Often they've put a 3D only version on one disc, and then in the same package, if you buy it, there is a second Blu-ray with the 2D only version on it. Even though that was entirely not necessary from a technical standpoint, a lot of releases decided to do that. So thank you, Hollywood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3D sucks. All right. We have no listeners of the week this week, but that doesn't mean that we won't next
Hmm.
week. Listeners of the week happen when people donate to the podcast. They do that by going to
Yes.
www.avrant.com. They click on the buy us a cup of coffee, and they buy us a cup of coffee or give us a PayPal donation, which is in this case the same thing. That helps support the podcast and keeps us going for the future. Like Rob said, we are the podcast that answers your AV and home theater questions, and we do that to great effect, great extent at the very least. If you have some questions, you can email them to rob@avrant.com, tom@avrant.com. Though I would highly recommend you email both of us at the same time. That makes sure that we both get them in case one of them gets stuck in the email box for a while and forgotten about, which has happened this week. You can also go to Twitter and at First Reflect for Rob or at AVRant_Tom for me. If you want to comment or ask questions after one of our podcasts, you can go. You can ask them on Google Plus. We get those every once in a while, though. We're not great about answering those. Facebook.com/AVRantPodcast will get you to our podcast page on Facebook, and you can just go to the website and comment there, and we will generally see that. That being said, we did get a couple of Chromecast questions. One person said that I think they were the one that asked the Chromecast question last week. He mentioned that he had to get a very long extender to a female to female, something like that. Anyways, male to female, whatever it is. He had to get an extender for his Chromecast to get it out of the cabinet because he had one custom built. It was an
Ah.
Aussie guy, and it was like
Hmm.
all solid hardwood, and that wasn't allowing the Wi-Fi signal to go through easily, which is
Oh,
going to be the
gee.
case no matter what. So
Yep.
one of the downsides is that Chromecast does not, there is no way to hardwire it, which some people might see that as a downside. I certainly do. That said, where I have mine placed right now in my house is pretty close to the modem. I have not noticed that flip between the standard def and the high def, except when I first start it. When I first start it, it'll go, I can see it slowly scaling up, but once it gets there, I haven't seen it flip back down since I've
Hmm.
had it for the last 2 weeks. I've been using it quite extensively. I'm so glad. I am so glad I cut the cord, and now that I have cable back in my house because of my parents, and I watch it, I'm so aggravated with commercials that I just want to slap myself in the face every time. Why are you doing this to yourself? This is awful.
Why can't we just have new high dollar content all the time for free? I mean, it really is that so much to ask?
I don't mind paying for it. I mean, I'm already paying for it. Well, somebody's paying for it, right? The cable company. Now we gotta have commercials. Can't we do it like wait? Doesn't England do it where they like have the entire 20-minute show and then you get 10 minutes of commercials at the end of it? Let's just do that so I can turn it off.
Maybe so.
That's all I want.
If things were federally funded, maybe that would happen.
I don't want things federally funded. All right. So this week we got a couple of things to talk about. Some comments and updates. Drew thanked us for what we talked about last week. We'll talk about that in a second. And he has some comments on that high-resolution audio test that was being done over ABS. He was one of the people that was able to tell the difference and wanted to comment on that. Raul also wanted to comment on that. Michael. He was the guy whose Onkyo receiver has got a busted HDMI board, if I remember correctly. And is that right? No.
Yep, that's correct. Yep. Yeah, he had a broken, or at least failing in the process of failing.
And he was also the one. He's also the one that said things were getting hot.
No, I think that was somebody else.
Oh, anyways, okay. So Michael, this Michael has a possible correction for us about why things might get hot or whether or not you have to have amps. Andy has a Banana Plugs comment. I got an announcement about an HDMI splitter, which will actually work with one source going to two different places with two different resolutions and two different everything, but it's not cheap. Yeah, and the same Michael again is got some. He's debating which subwoofer to buy because of price. He's also wondering about new AV receiver model availability. He's got some speaker setting questions. Infinite Gary wants to be bumped to next week, but if we don't, he will find out what measurements would show whether a room has too much or too little acoustic dampening. Leighton, who we talked about last week, and I said he should probably try really, really hard to reposition the subwoofers because it looks like he has some space. Decided that, yes, in fact, he does have a little bit of space and has some questions about that. And he wants to talk about how to set up those subs, those dual subs. Matthew has some follow-up questions about his electrostatic speaker setup. This is the guy who only emailed me. Oops. Sorry, dude. That was a complete... I usually check all my emails to make sure that if they come straight to me, I also forward them to Rob because Rob puts them on the list and the list gets sent back to me. So I had read your question and I had lots of answers for you. It's just that when I didn't forward it to Rob, I forgot about it. Monty has questions specifically for Rob about NAS drives. Jason wants some wireless headphones, which is going to get some advice from us about that. Nathan wants to know what we suggest when someone doesn't have Audyssey Dynamic EQ. Can you guess? Gaylen needs to make a final decision on his AV receiver replacement. This is the guy whose board broke,
yes,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
This is the guy who's broke board. Oh, that was my bad. And he had the 818, and they were offering him an 828.
No, he had an 805. It was older.
Oh, 805. So they're offering him an 818 or an 828, and now he's got another option on the board and wants to know what we think. Bob upgraded surround sound speakers, and now he's thinking about adding even more speakers. Dolby Atmos, here Bob comes. Before we get into any of this, I wrote an article over on Audioholics, which caused a little bit of controversy, much gnashing of teeth, especially over at AVS Forum.
Yes, many of whom don't seem to understand what an editorial is, and should be getting mad at every newspaper in the world by their reasoning. But anyway, that aside.
Yeah, so I wrote an editorial basically saying that I thought Atmos was DOA. Not basically. I think those were the exact words. Those words might have been.
Say might. You did put a might in there.
Did I put
might be DOA. Yeah, I remember that.
I honestly think somebody added that might editorially afterwards. I'm pretty sure I said is when I first initially wrote it. That said, basically my point was that, and I've talked to a lot of people about the article and about my thoughts about it since, and this is in person, people I know, and most of them have no idea what Dolby Atmos is. Okay, and had never heard of it, which is fine. I kind of expect that. This is a brand new technology. You and I and the people who listen to this podcast are sort of on the cutting edge of these things. I expect that you people will know about it and these other people won't. Well, when I told them what it was and what they expected them to do, i.e. put speakers on their ceilings,
yeah,
I guess, and this is in the follow-up article that I'm working on right now, the best way to describe the sound was a scoff of derision. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, do you know how long it took? This was my dad. You know how long it took for me to get your mother to let me put surround speakers in? Period. You really think we're getting speakers on the ceiling? I'm like, I really don't.
We're gonna have to put that little look of derision graphic, the little like the little symbol thing that shows up on Twitter with the like guy who's just got the frowny eyes.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So I'm telling people about it, and they're like, there's no way. I mean, yeah, like I got a friend whose wife won't let him buy an HDTV because it won't fit on the cabinet in the room she won't modify the cabinet or let me modify the cabinet. I've got, like I know quite a few people that have decent speakers, but they
Mm-hmm.
won't turn them on because they don't want to wake kids up. Like, you realize they have volume control? No, won't turn them on. Well, they just use the TV speakers. I mean, it's just, and we really think that these are the people that are going to be putting speakers in their ceilings.
Mm.
My biggest kind of beef with the whole thing, honestly, is my disappointment. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in my next article. My disappointment in what I really thought Atmos could be and what Atmos
Right.
actually is. Atmos could have been, put your speakers where you can, we'll figure out where they are, and we're going to give you the best surround sound experience we can. Okay, that's what it could be. There's no reason it can't be.
See, I mean, it's funny because, you know, I think, I mean, I know we mentioned that on the podcast, that idea, right? And it came about because when we first heard about object-based audio, this idea of instead of using channels and deciding, the sound mixer deciding what speaker a sound will come out of, they just choose where a sound is supposed to come from in 3D space, and then, hey, the processor figures out what speakers it needs to use in order to try and make the sound seem to come from that location. And we heard Dolby saying things like, "Oh yes, it's scalable. It basically doesn't matter how many speakers you're using. It will adjust to how many speakers are in the room, and it will adjust to the locations where they are." And we kind of took that and ran with it, and maybe ran a little bit too far with it because, I've actually looked at some of the white papers that Dolby had, not for the home version of Atmos, but for the actual cinema version of Atmos. And in those documents, they lay out some pretty strict guidelines on where the speakers are supposed to be placed. And the way I describe it is they basically give you 6 tracks. So you have your front wall, your back wall, your left wall, your right wall, and then you have 2 rows overhead. And so it's like, yeah, speakers can be anywhere along those rows, but they got to be on those rows, and they're supposed to be evenly spaced, and you're supposed to have this number if your room is this large, and they're supposed to be angled this way so they cover all the seats, and they're supposed to be all aimed at, this given, listening area in the theater. So it was pretty strict from the start. So I think our hope and our speculation got well ahead of what Dolby actually developed with Atmos.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. But the fact of the matter is that within the track, within the Dolby Atmos spec, there is an XYZ coordinate. It is not a large leap to think that they could. I mean,
Right.
Yamaha's doing it right now,
Yeah.
right? Yamaha's doing it right now with the reflective sound control. You could put all your speakers up at the front, as far as Yamaha's concerned. They'll figure it out. I hate that
They do
idea,
have a
but
mode for that.
they have a mode for that now. So there's
Yeah,
no
and
reason why we could not see this happen. This is a technology that's certainly developed. It could be there.
yeah, it's what DTS wants to do with their DTS UHD format, which
Yeah.
is basically the competitor to Dolby Atmos. It's DTS's version of object-based audio, and they've made the claim that's what it's going to be. You can set your speakers in non-optimal, non-standardized locations, and it is supposed to adjust, but that's going to require a whole bunch more processing power somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah.
See, what I really think is that Dolby and DTS, I mean, they're always in some sort of war, right?
Mhm.
They're always in a race to bring you whatever they're going to bring you, right? And I think within like at least the audiophile community or the movie file community, DTS is the name. I mean, DTS is what you kind of have been going for. The DTS tracks, they always were a little hotter in the bass, so all the bass heads loved them. And I kind of preferred them, and I prefer the DTS cinemas when I would go to them and stuff like that. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe it wasn't because they were the most linear, the most accurate, but to me they always sounded the best. That being said, Dolby, it feels to me, went, oh, okay, we're developing things at the same time. We better get on this and get this out there right now
Mm.
even though we're not really ready to do all the stuff that we want to be able to do and what DTS is saying they're going to do with it. But what I feel like this is going to do is sour the public. It's going to sour the public to this whole idea, and then we're going to end up with DTS coming out with a superior technology. I don't know if that's going to happen. Maybe Dolby will put this out in a year. You know, the next round will be like, oh yeah, now you can put your speakers where the hell you want.
Right.
Maybe that's what they'll do. But this whole idea of because this is the party line they're giving us. Hey, we've got this great new thing. All you need is ceilings on your speakers on your ceilings to figure it to experience it. Or if you don't have that, you can buy new speakers to point up at your ceilings. It's like.
Or if you don't want to do that, you can use little add-on modules.
That's true, but those add-on modules are only really for the those specific speakers so far, right? The DefTech ones.
Well, the DefTech ones, I mean, they made specifically, they gave them a weird shape so that they would only fit on top of their own towers, but Onkyo has modules that are just plain boxes, so they'll go wherever there's a flat surface.
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm disappointed in the whole thing, and if if Atmos stays where it is right now, if they keep pushing this whole, all you have to do is get these funky speakers that point up or modules or whatever, and you have to have them pointed at this specific spot in your ceiling, and your ceiling better not be having the absorption on it because then it won't work as well, and it better not be vaulted because then it won't work as well, and it better not have a ceiling fan because it won't work as well. As long as it's that, it's never going to work. It's never going to fly. People are never going to use it. It's going to be another thing that's in your receiver that you never turn on. And that's fine. It'll sell receivers for the next little while, but it's a shame because it could be so much more, I feel like.
So I had a little rosier outlook on the whole thing, and I wrote a reply on Audioholics' forum to Tom's article. So we'll put links to all this stuff in the show notes over at avrant.com and facebook.com/avrantpodcast. But yeah, I mean, my basic take on it is I think the problem right now, because what I find disheartening, let's go with that word, is that I don't think we should be feeling negatively about Dolby Atmos, but we are. And I understand why we are, and I think that's a shame, because we shouldn't really need to, but that means what's happened is there's a problem with the messaging, there's a problem with some key pieces of info not being out there, so nothing drives people more angry or gets them more, their spines set against something than being unsure of how this is all going to play out.
Yeah.
And having these ideas of what we want it to be, and then looking at the implementation of it and going, that's not what I want it to be. So that's the disconnect. And ultimately, I think Dolby Atmos soundtracks make a heck of a lot of sense, and I know Tom agrees on that side of it.
Well, I said as much in my article.
Exactly. On the production side, the distribution side, those totally make sense. So if the soundtracks make sense, then to me it makes sense to try and find a way of playing it back to the best of our ability in our homes. That seems like a perfectly reasonable goal. It's just how we're going about it and not having quite all the info yet.
Yeah, talking to the Dolby people, they're saying right now still that it's basically, first of all, it's all, we're still talking discrete channels. These things are not all as movable as they say at this point. And there is the bed layer, right? There's the bed layer, but that bed layer is essentially still a discrete channel mix. And that object-based mix doesn't come in unless you have the Atmos speakers. And that sort of defeats the purpose to me. The point is that it should be one mix. And then at that point, it just figures out how many speakers you have. And in my mind, where those speakers are so that it will give you the best possible surround experience. But instead, that's not what they've done, and I really feel like it's because they're trying to leapfrog in front of DTS at this point. I might be wrong about that,
well,
but
I
feel like
totally think they're trying to reach critical mass. I totally feel that's what they're doing, and honestly, they're doing as good a job as you could really see them doing at this point, because hey, they are out in front. There's no question about it. But
I'll tell you what: if this time next year DTS says, "Hey." We've got our object. We've got our UHD. We've got our UHD, and you can put your speakers wherever the hell you want. And if you've got some to put in your ceiling, that's fine. If you have height speakers, that's fine. If you have some that are at ear level, that's fine. We'll figure it out. is going to just, I mean, that's going to be something that we're going to be, that would be something I'd consider buying a new receiver for. I mean, that's how exciting that is.
What soundtracks will need to be on the discs or in the streams or in the downloads in order for that to actually work.
Yeah.
That's, it's the content side too. So it's the whole signal chain. But anyway, I mean, really the point is, does it sound good? Does it sound compelling enough that you're going to want to spend more money? Because, I mean, if you want to do it, the thing I like about Dolby Atmos on the soundtrack side is that you don't have to upgrade anything. You can buy a Dolby Atmos Blu-ray and play it back on the system you have right now. It's not like that won't work. So I like that side of it. That's great. But if you want to experience the whole thing that it can do, you have to buy a new processor or AV receiver, and you have to, at least reposition a couple of speakers. So it has to be compelling. It has to be something people want. And Dolby's been doing these demos over the past week or so. Lots of journalists, lots of forum people, lots of industry folks have gone and seen these demos. And ultimately, the takeaway, I mean, we had Ray Coronado, who's a listener of this podcast, and he came into one of our hangouts and commented. And Jeffrey Morrison, he posted his impressions on CNET, and Thomas Norton over at Sound and Vision, and Josh Zeiber over at High Def Digest, and Scott Wilkinson and other people at AVS, they put up a whole thread about theirs. They went and saw it as well. And to me, the thing I really took away from it on the positive side was that they did demo these Dolby Atmos enabled speakers, the ones that have the upward firing driver built into it. And everybody has universally said, no, they do not sound the same as the actual physical speakers mounted to the ceiling, because they had those too and switched back and forth. So everybody said, yeah, we can totally tell the difference. No, the timbre match of the bounce speakers, the ones that are reflecting the sound off the ceiling, is not as good. However, nobody said, oh, they were a complete failure. I completely missed the sense of sound coming from above me. Everybody said, no, that effect was fairly convincing. It sounded like stuff was coming from above us. So,
yeah, I get that. And that's fine. This is like I assume that Dolby is doing absolutely the best they can possibly do to make this the most effective demos ever. And if you read these things, I come away with one of two things: either it worked and it sounded a little bit better, or you get the disingenuous, oh well, there was a hole, that normal hole I hear above me was no longer there. I'm like, you never heard a hole above you until someone told you there was a hole above you, and don't lie and say that you did, because you didn't. Because I have been in my own home theater and had something like Star Wars: The Clone Wars, right? Star Wars 2, whenever, when that ship flies overhead, I never once thought, oh, well, it doesn't actually sound like it's overhead because there's those speakers up there. It sounds like it's coming from overhead. It does. It did. It always has.
For me, it's the movie The Others, that one with Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
There's one sound where it sounds like somebody is stomping across the floor on the ceiling above you, like they're on the second floor and you're on the first floor, and they're like stomping their feet all the way across. It's totally convincing.
Yeah.
Totally convincing. Yeah. And didn't have any speakers up there, so.
That being said, hey, it gives a bit more spaciousness, and now it sounds like there's some sounds above you, is not compelling. It's not. What is compelling is the idea that your sound is going to sound better because of Atmos. You know what I'm saying?
You really want that speaker mapping.
No, I do. But even if it's not that, the line should be Atmos is better. That's what it should be. Atmos is better because it's object-based. Therefore, it will sound better. Okay. And then if you get speakers, they'll sound on your ceiling. It'll sound even better. You'll be able to experience full Atmos. But that's not the line. They're like, in order to experience anything at all, which is kind of true right now, because of the way they've implemented it, you have to have the speakers on the ceiling or something bouncing off. And that's not the line that people want to hear, because the line that the custom installers and the retailers are hearing is, yay, I get to sell more speakers. But what everybody else is hearing is, what? I have to buy new speakers and put them on what? Have you lost your mind? It's just it's an unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate right now. I do think they can salvage this. I honestly do. I think that the criticism that I'm leveling at it and other people, because believe me, if you look through the comments, even on AVS, the comments over at AVS, I mean, there's some people who are like, he's a crazy person. He's a whatever. That's AVS. All right, but if you look at like the more reasonable comments, people are going, these are a lot of my concerns too. These are a lot of the reasons that I'm not going to implement. I'm an early adopter type, and I'm not going to do it, because how the hell am I supposed to get speakers on my ceiling? And I've got $5,000
Hmm.
front speakers, I am not going to go buy a $1,400 pair of Andrew Jackson, John, whatever the hell his name is,
Jones.
whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a crazy person, but I have no way of implementing this. I can't hang speakers from my ceiling. I've acoustically treated my ceiling and don't really want to take that down, so the bounce speakers wouldn't work well for me. So I'm going to have to, if I'm going to do it, I'd have to make do with heights. I can't put up heights at the back of my room, so I'd only have my front heights. It's like, I would like to, and I can't, and that's me. I'm insane. I already put 11 speakers in my theater, and I'd have to get a new AV receiver,
And
on
you'd have
top
to
of
take your
everything.
rear speakers and put them at ear level. Your rear
I know.
speakers and your surround speakers. Because you got to
Yeah.
remember, guys, we've been telling you this whole time where do surround speakers go? A little bit back and 2 feet above your ears, right?
Hmm.
No, not for Atmos. For Atmos, they're at ear level. What? I don't think so. That's not what anybody said until Atmos came out. And Dolby's like, oh yeah, we've been saying that this whole time. No, you haven't. Shut up, liars.
That's definitely not true. They definitely used to say to elevate the surround speaker.
So now,
Everybody.
now, I mean, it's like I said, it's in their best interest to do this speaker mapping thing. I am telling you, it's in their best interest because if they can do that, they can really make this work and sell it. But if they can't do it, and they keep telling people they have to take speakers off the wall and put them down at ear level, and then put speakers on the ceiling, they're going to sell about 5 of these. I mean, they'll sell them because the other receiver will have other things. Just like I'm going to have, 7, 8, 9, 11, however many channels in the X4000. I don't need it, but that's not what I bought it for. I bought it for the Audyssey Multi-QXT 32, and that's what I bought it for. So, all right, enough of that nonsense.
Yes.
Dolby Atmos.
But feel
All right.
free to weigh in the
Yeah,
comments and at Facebook.
tell me how wrong I am, because damn it.
And we will post lots of links to all those things if you're interested in reading all the impressions, because they're it's fun to read through it if you're interested. So
Yeah,
check out the
and
links.
Ray was pretty impressed. Like I have heard,
Yeah,
Ray said
yeah,
something that people haven't said, which is that he thought that the bounce speakers sounded better than the direct speakers.
yeah.
Could very well be where he was sitting or whatever, and that's interesting. To me, I don't know what that means. I mean, because there's no way the bounce speakers should sound better. They
Well, it
should
was
not
just that they
sound better.
sounded
I
more
mean, the direct speakers.
So he found the direct speakers because it was a low ceiling in the room that he was in, or relatively low. It was like 8.5 foot ceiling, which is normal height. But he,
Yeah.
he found the direct firing speakers distracting because it was so localizable. It is exactly that speaker right there on the ceiling. Whereas the bounce one, it was more diffuse. So it was like, oh yeah, it's up there,
Yeah.
but not like super distractingly so. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, well, maybe that's some work to do on the speakers. All right, so Drew, first of all, he thanked us for his outdoor speaker placement question last week. He likes Rob's idea of co-locating a pair of speakers on each side of his wraparound porch, so he would likely do that. Yay. Secondly, he was one of the 6 people in the AVS forum AIX high-resolution audio experiment that used a high-resolution capable system. These are headphones that he used, and correctly identified all 3 test tracks. He went in skeptical, but made sure he did not subconsciously see the different file sizes. I don't know how you can do that, but okay. And he found that he was able to identify all 3 tracks within the first minute of each comparison. He says that the high frequencies were where he heard the difference and has made him reconsider the value of a high-quality, high-resolution recording.
Yeah, I mean, so this is one person who I'm totally willing to trust and take him at his word. And, we were talking about this in the Google Hangout there last week after the show. And, I still personally don't buy at all into the idea that it's the ultrasonic frequencies that are making some difference, the frequencies that are captured all the way up to maybe 48 kilohertz if it's, a 96 kilohertz sampling rate. That part I don't buy, but what I totally, totally do buy is that, digital audio is essentially turning a wave into a series of dots. And then when you take that digital audio and turn it back into analog and amplify it and play it back through your speakers, you're essentially playing connect the dots. You're taking the dots and you're drawing it back into a wave. If you have more dots to draw the wave, you can draw a more accurate representation of the wave. That makes sense. And the part that really makes sense to me is that when you're talking about CD quality audio and people talk about the Nyquist frequency, the highest frequency that could be perfectly reconstructed based on the sampling frequency, and it's just exactly half of the sampling frequency is the highest frequency that you can perfectly reconstruct. but that's only if it's a sine wave, only if it's a perfect sine wave, and not all sounds are sine waves. In fact, lots of sounds are not perfect sine waves. So to me, it kind of makes sense. Hey, it's a matter of things like plucking sounds, clanging sounds, things that are not perfect sine waves. If you can draw them more accurately because you simply have more dots to work with, I can see that, if you have high resolution enough equipment, perhaps being audible. So I don't totally discount it.
Yeah, I mean, he did it. I want to see
Right.
more people being able to do it. Sample size and all. But yeah, congratulations, Drew. Good job. Raul, on the other hand, used PC speakers and couldn't hear crap. So there you go, Raul. Raul was on the other end of that. So either.
Yeah, and to me that is the big thing because it's like even in the case of Drew saying, yeah, within a minute I could tell which one was which. It's like, yeah, but you're not, like thinking that everybody is going to have that level of equipment or be listening that carefully. That's where I come into it. I'm still waiting for I'm still waiting for the people who claim that high resolution audio it's such a huge difference and it's always worth it. I'm like, no, there's plenty of instances where it isn't. So, yeah.
Even with high-end gear, like headphones and stuff like that, even if you have that, like a high-end portable player, high-end gear,
Mhm.
you're sitting at your kid's soccer game, and you got your high-end headphones in, and it's just not gonna. You're just not gonna be hearing it. That's just all there is to it. I want to say this because I've been meaning to say it for a couple of weeks. I have been
Mhm.
really impressed with the number of over-ear headphones I've been seeing just randomly on the street.
Mm.
Just lots more people getting away from the earbuds. I've been
Mhm.
seeing more aftermarket, I would call them aftermarket earbuds as well. Ones that aren't in-ear monitors,
Yeah.
uh, rather than just the stock earbuds. I've seen people getting away from them, which is nice to see. I
Yeah.
don't always agree with their choices, but at least it's better than just going with those awful, awful earbuds. So,
And I will
yay.
say, as much as I do not like Beats, and I think that they're incredibly overpriced, I will thank them because they have clearly changed the market.
Yeah.
As in, consumers are just willing to actually spend some money and buy some good headphones over your headphones, like Tom is saying. So I do really think
I've
Beats
seen
had a
people
lot to do with
exercising
that.
with them too.
Yeah.
I mean, like running with over-ear headphones on. I'm like, you go, girl. That's hardcore. I would never do that. All right, Michael. Last week we told
Lior.
Lior, that his Onkyo AV receiver got really hot. Liar. Uh, dude, poor. I wonder what. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, guy. His Onkyo receiver got really hot because of the amps. Michael has an Integra Pre-Pro, no amps inside, and separate Sunfire amplifier. The Integra gets hot, but the Sunfire amps always stay cool.
Hmm.
So, in the case of the Integra Pre-Pro, it obviously can't be the amps. He's also wondering how the Sunfire GTA 7200 7200 or 7. I say 7200 because it's really 7 channels, 200, and I
Yeah.
always kind of read it that way. Uh, that's the way ATI. Doesn't ATI do them that way too, right?
Yeah,
They
sort
do
of.
their
Yeah.
something like they used to do it more so. And he's also wondering why his Sunfire never manages to get warm. Well, Integra, first of all, do you put the Integra on top of the Sunfire? Because if that's the case, that might explain some of it. And if you have
I
a,
kind of don't think so.
if you have an Xbox 360 anywhere near any of this, that's the culprit. That being said, I mean, there is power that goes into your Integra. There's no doubt about that. There's a power supply in there, and it can get hot. And if it's not properly ventilated, I mean, your computer gets hot, your laptop gets hot.
Yeah.
All these things
Yeah,
get
yeah,
hot.
I was rethinking about it because I mean, if you go into your BIOS in any of your computers and you look at the temperature of your CPU, I mean that can be up around 40, 50 degrees Celsius, and that's when it's got a heat sink and a fan on it,
Yeah.
and a lot, pretty much all the processors inside of a regular, home theater processor or AV receiver don't have a heat sink or a fan on them. So, okay, I could see them getting up 40, 50 degrees, sure. That, and I guess if it's close enough to the top or whatever, it could heat things up. So I'm willing to reconsider that.
Yeah,
It
but
might actually
if
be the chips
somebody comes to
inside.
me with a receiver that's getting hot, the first thing I'm
Uh-huh.
not going to think is, oh, it's the processor.
Right.
It's going to be.
I know.
Chances are it's the amps. It's just like you don't say, oh, my car's making this boom, boom, boom sound every time I try to move forward. I'm not going to think it's probably your transmission. I'm going to think, did you check the tires? That sounds like a flat tire to me. Let's just go there first, and then eliminate that. Why does your Sunfire not get hot? Well, it probably has more than adequate heat sinking and ventilation. Proper ventilation, heat sinking, or maybe your speakers just don't take that much power to power as well.
Yep.
So it could be that.
I mean, that thing is capable of delivering a genuine 200 watts to all 7 channels simultaneously. I mean, it can deliver a lot of power. The chances that you're using anything close to that amount of power are nil. I mean, they really are nil. There's no way you're coming anywhere close. So if it's designed to be able to function delivering 1400 watts continuously, and that's the kind of heat sinking they put on there so that it can run like that continuously, then you can bet when it's delivering like 1 watt per channel, it's not going to have a problem with heat. So it's a good design. That's why it stays cool. Good design.
Yeah. And the Integra is also made by Onkyo, and therefore it's like they get hot. They run better hot, I think. I think that's their motto. Onkyo and Integra, best when cooked upon. All right, Andy Andy E says he and we were talking about banana plugs last week. I said I like the screw type. What are those called? The
locking banana plugs.
Locking banana plugs.
Anyway.
Yeah. Then somebody else, Rob was mentioning the compression type. Well, there's another kind of compression type made by AudioQuest, which I feel dirty for even saying the name.
There's some other brands that make them too, but
yeah.
Those were the most easily found.
They're just slightly larger, and they have a cutout. They're just slightly larger than the banana plug hole thingy that goes in there. So when you put it in there, it's nice and tight. Really hard to get in, really hard to get out. Been known to break as you're getting them out, but they're basically a different type of compression type. I still like mine the best because you can loosen them, they slide right out. You can tighten them, and they ain't going nowhere. So, but if you want to spend a bunch of money on AudioQuest, you're more than welcome to. I don't agree with that. Those are the BFA style banana plugs. I don't know.
Regardless, what we all have in common is that we do like having banana plugs because they are in some way convenient and they help you, prevent having that one single strand of speaker wire that ventures its way across to the other post and turns your AV receiver into protection mode. So we all like banana plugs of some sort.
Yes, we do. There's probably some sort of pedal reason for that as well. All right, before we get into our questions and discussion topics for this week, these are the ones we got for this week. Let's mention I got a press release from a company called Transformative Engineering. They introduced their HDS 12i. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a little i because it's got to have a little i in there somewhere.
Someplace. There's no X. It's got to have an I. 12i HDS 12i HDMI 1x2 splitter for the paltry sum of $300. It will let you connect one source to 2 different displays, even with different resolutions and different HDCP's connections. So, if you really, really have to do this, and you really, really don't have another way of doing it, and you don't want to upgrade your receiver to something for $300, you could practically buy a new receiver that'll do it for you.
But a while back we were talking about passive HDMI splitters or powered HDMI splitters, all of which were nowhere near this price point. But we were mentioning how the one reason they can potentially be a problem is because if you happen to have both displays on at the same time, then the source device is going to be seeing 2 different ED-IDs, and it might freak out and say, I don't know what to do in this situation. So this thing guarantees that no matter what things you have on and no matter what's connected, it will all function, but it will cost you $299. So might be worth just making sure you turn off one display at a time. That might be the cheaper solution. Yeah.
Anywho, all right, questions. Michael R. Is debating. Okay, Michael's in Canada, so he's looking at this is total cost here. Shipping and taxes included. He wants a subwoofer that can play comfortably down to 25 hertz or lower. What is his price?
Well, he's hoping to keep it around 500-ish. In the sort of $500 area.
They don't have a local dealer. I thought they had local dealers for SVS up there.
No, we just have the local distributor or the Canadian distributor, which is Sonic Boom Audio.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of.
Hmm.
So those are up to the SB 1000, the PB 1000 end up costing close to $700. He was considering the 10-inch ported PSB Sub Series 200, but its specs say minus 3 dB at 28 and minus 10 dB at 25, which means there is a lot going on at 25 hertz. So comfortably, it is not is playing to 30. At this point,
Right.
I think 30 would be a good thing to say.
Yeah, it means its port is tuned to somewhere around what about 33, 35-ish.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
about where its port is resonating. So, yeah, it's
So he was wondering if the 1000 series subs will really be worth an extra the extra $150. Well, if you want to get what you want, then yes, because if you're okay with saying you want something but taking something less than that, then you can get this other one, save $150. But if it were my $150, I would save it up and get the SVS.
Yeah, the problem here is, I mean, Michael already has a sub. It's one of the Polk 10 inchers, 100
Oh,
watt
right.
little dealies, and I mean, he's really not happy with it. It's really not performing the way he wants. He wants to improve upon that. So, I mean, my thing is, do you want to spend $550 for a small upgrade that doesn't get you all the way to where you want to be? Or do you want to potentially spend a little bit more? Yes, maybe more than you were hoping to spend initially, but actually get what you want. Because to me, it's a bigger waste of money to spend that much and still not, ultimately get the results you were hoping for. I was looking around for sales and stuff, in Canada from Canadian retailers. The Canadian version of Best Buy right now did have a sale on the Klipsch Sub 12. Which normally retails for like $600, which would have made it just as expensive after tax as the SVS models. But Best Buy had it on sale for $400. I mean, that one, I wouldn't say it's exactly the equal of the PB 1000, but when you consider the price tag of being $400, it'd be like that's closer to getting you where you want to be. It's just as large. It's got a 12-inch driver. It's ported. It's got a 300-watt bash amp. I mean, just from its design alone, it's going to be able to play lower and louder than that little PSB one. So, looking for sales like that can certainly be worthwhile, but I would avoid going something that doesn't get you all the way to where you want to be. So, yeah.
Yeah, especially when you're going to be saying to yourself somewhere down the line, I spent $500 on this thing that I now no longer want.
Yeah.
So is it worth you saying, a month, 6 months, a year from now, I'm glad I spent that extra $150, or are you going to be kicking yourself because you didn't? I have, in my experience, far too often bought the thing that was just below the thing I wanted. Like there was the thing I wanted, and the other thing that was pretty close to it was, a bit cheaper, and I kind of skimped out. I have always, without fail, regretted that. Always. And I think that it's just worth it to save up and get the extra, get what you really want. And that way, that subwoofer, barring self-destruction and or act of God, is something that you're not, I mean, it's not like we're going to start inventing subs that go down, that are going to be really, really cheap, that go down to 15 hertz, and you're going to be like, now I have to replace all these things. You're going to be like, now I have a sub that also goes to 15. You know what I mean? It's not going to be, it's not going to be something that you're going to feel, it's almost as good as buying a good amp. A good amp will stay with you for pretty much ever. It's not like we ever get rid of those things. A good subwoofer can kind of stick around for really, really long. It'll outlive all your electronics.
Yeah.
It will outlive most of your speakers.
The other thing I would highly suggest is get in touch with Sonic Boom Audio. Ask if they have any B stock.
Yeah,
because they don't list it on their website, but sometimes they have it because occasionally they get a return. And that ends up being sold as B stock. So totally worth that phone call. That's easy.
Yeah. All right. He also says there's a Canadian retailer called Gibby's Electronics Supermarket. They're already listing and selling the Denon AVR X4100, which is the one after mine, the one that'll have Atmos with it, and the AVR 5200 and the Rant's SR 7009 AV receiver models with Dolby Atmos. Are these models even available yet? No. And should potential customers be wary? Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't know this, then you should get an email right after you purchase it saying it's not available to ship now, but we'll let you know. In the case of the Denon, it's the fall, I think.
Yeah,
so,
and Gibby's actually does say that in the product description. It does say it's a pre-order, available fall 2014. They didn't give an exact month or date. In the case of the Marantz 7009, it does just say add to cart. And I mean,
Well, that's
Marantz has said
supposed to ship in a couple of weeks. I mean, it's
it's supposed
sometime
to
in
ship in September,
September,
yeah. So.
is what Moran said. It didn't give the in the press releases. I don't think they rarely give the exact dates, but they did say
Yeah.
September for that. Hopefully, that's September 1st, in the case of the people who are ordering now. But it's a little disingenuous, but it's not. I don't think technically illegal.
Yeah, this is, in this kind of case, when they are officially announced and they do have release dates, and retailers that are going to be getting stock should have, some estimated ETAs anyway. I don't see it as a reason to avoid them as a retailer just because they put it up on their site and said, yeah, there's a pre-order. Go ahead and, order it now if you'd like to. So
yeah,
that's okay by me. But
All
they're
right.
not available yet, to answer that part.
He's also continuing to struggle with his speaker and subwoofer settings. He's tried having his front tower set to both large and small, and he's tried having his current subwoofer set to both LFE and LFE plus. This is the subwoofer that sucks, right? Not a good
Yes.
one. Okay.
Yeah.
And he says he really couldn't hear a difference between any of them. Is this because his speaker specifications say they can play just as low as his current subwoofer?
Well, I mean, yeah. So I mean, I kind of wanted to go on a little bit of a tangent on this one, just because Michael has asked sort of similar questions in the past, and one of the things I like to stress about AV Rant is that we like it when people ask for clarification, and we don't mind at all if someone asks a question that has already been asked before, because like we've heard so many times, people have told us, I really didn't get something the first time you said it on the podcast, but I heard it like the second time, the third time, and it started to make sense to me. Or I just needed some clarification on this one little part of it. So anybody who's got a question, if you're ever worried that we won't want to answer it because something similar has already been asked, do not worry about that. Please send in the question, because we love that, and we love to make things clear. So in this case, I mean, first of all, I'll go back to my thing of I always recommend setting your front speakers to small. Always. Even if they're capable of playing low, I still recommend setting them to small and giving them a crossover to your subwoofer, probably starting at 80 hertz. That's usually a pretty safe bet, but you can do my little trick of playing a bass sweep through one speaker at a time and seeing how low it can go while remaining linear and not starting to sound like a roller coaster or rolling off. So, I mean, I always recommend setting it to small. If you do that, you pretty much have no choice but to set your subwoofer to LFE. If you set it to LFE plus mains, it won't really make a difference because it's getting the sound from the front speakers anyway if you set the front speakers to small. So there shouldn't really be any difference there. It's odd if he set his front speakers to both large and small and never heard any difference. Because there should have been some difference in terms of what bass was, if he's got sort of a weaker subwoofer that he's not really happy with, there should have been some difference there. So it kind of makes me wonder
like there's something really weird going on as far as the settings and how things are set up, and whether maybe where's crossover. I don't know, because that's a really hard question. It's like somebody asking you, my TV's doing something weird. What should I do? I don't know. Turn it off, turn it back on. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Like I had my parents. This happened just the other day. I think it was this morning, this afternoon. I was outside washing the car, and the kids were inside, and my parents were like, "Oh, we're going to turn the TV on for the kids." I'm like, "I don't care. Set them on fire. At this point, I don't care. I'm washing the car. I haven't washed it in like a year. It's like my yearly car wash, and it wasn't even my car wash day, because around here we have water restrictions, and you're not supposed to wash it. I'm like, just arrest me for washing the car the one time a year I did it. Anyways, they came out. They're like, the speakers won't work. I'm like, are they on? He goes, yep. I don't know. I'm washing the car. I'll just go back. Came back in. The cable had come unplugged. That's all it was.
Yeah.
It was a cable had come unplugged. The optical cable from the TV down. I could never have diagnosed that. So this one's like that for me. It's like there is something going on as far as what you're changing and whether or not are you changing things from large and small? Are you the LFE to the mains? Where is your subwoofer set? Is your subwoofer even playing anything? If that's the case, then even then you should be hearing something different when you go from large to small and you turn your subwoofer off. Turn your subwoofer off. If you still you don't hear the difference between large and small, what the hell's your crossover set at? like 20?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm really wondering about is I know he does have Denon 1912 that does have Audyssey, and I know he has tried, he's experimented with Audyssey. So if he had, somewhat recently run Audyssey and it went ahead and set the crossover for his front speakers to 40 hertz, which is entirely possible
Yeah, for
because
sure.
Audyssey likes to do things like that, or at least Denon does when they're doing their setup. And his speakers, according to their specs, they are capable of playing down to about 35 hertz. There's every chance in the world when he ran the Audyssey auto setup, it went and set the crossover to 40 hertz or set them to full range.
Right.
So he goes in, manually sets them to small. They're still playing all the way down to 40 hertz. You're not going to hear much of a difference.
Yeah, you
because his
should.
subwoofer only plays down to about 40 hertz too. So that would totally make sense. So if you're doing this experiment, make sure, one, turn off Audyssey, because you don't want to have it trying to EQ the bass in your speakers and doing all sorts of weirdness to the signal that way. So if you just want to see the difference between having your front speaker set to large versus small and your subwoofer between having it set to LFE or LFE plus mains, make sure you're turning off Audyssey for that experiment. Make sure you're setting a crossover that's at least up around 80 hertz, something that's going to be quite obvious.
Yeah.
That, to me, is the most likely culprit for why he wouldn't have heard any
The
difference.
honest truth is that it could be a ton of other things too. There could
Right,
be
yeah.
all sorts of other things that are making this.
I'm going for what I think is simplest explanation.
Yeah, the Occam's razor thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
so play around with it some more, and then just do what we say as far as the settings. All right, Infinite. Before I think we skipped somebody, right? Infinite Gary. Let's wait on him for a second. You went and visited Paul. I missed
I
that.
did. Yes.
I
Yeah,
missed
yeah. Just last week on Wednesday there in the
He's
continuing
our indie
adventure.
driver who no longer has a car, which disappoints me. Because I want a car again.
Yeah,
See if
I
your
did
daughter
see
will
the
let me
street stock.
slap a sticker on her car.
I did see the good number 72 there, and it was definitely looking the worse for wear.
Oh.
So felt a little bad for our AV Rant sponsored street stock car there. But yeah, this is the ongoing adventure of taking what was his big ugly dish that he used to use for the old analog C-band satellite television transmissions, and trying to convert it to make use of the new digital free-to-air television satellite transmissions. So what had happened was, first of all, physically the dish itself had sort of slid off of its positioning on its mount. It has sort of a pneumatic arm so that you can swing it from east to west. But the attachment of the satellite dish itself to that pneumatic arm, the collar that holds it in place, had sort of come loose. So first of all, we were up on ladders in the rain and adjusting things with wrenches and had to get a third set of hands over there because there was no way to hold the dish steady and move it and loosen and tighten the collar with just the two of us. So that was a fun little adventure to get us started. Then we realized when we did swing it east to west, it kind of did so in a very jerky Frankensteinish manner. So a little bit of extra greasing of the pneumatic arm was in order to make sure that it moved a little bit more smoothly and would reliably go where we told it to go instead of lurching its way somewhere approximate. Because a little degree off on the ground can mean a big degree off up in space. So it's kind of important.
Generally speaking, yeah.
So anyway, the whole reason we had waited this long is because he got one of these FTA digital converter boxes. So as long as the big dish in his yard is pointing at a satellite in space, we can take that signal and feed it into this little digital converter box and send that onto his television. The first one he got was having all sorts of problems. It would turn on and then go blank and waited a while, and it might come back on and it would forget all its settings and tune into a channel and then lose it and all this stuff. Discovered it really was a faulty box, so we got the replacement. And the thing is, we're certainly not all the way done yet, but largely a success. We located 6 of the digital satellites up there. We tuned into channels. I have to say, the whole thing kind of makes me think it might be a little bit more trouble than it's worth, because we're pretty much getting Spanish language and all religious channels, and that's about it. Maybe
Nice.
that's all that's free to air available to us in our area, because there were a whole bunch of channels that came
All the
in.
football that you can stomach.
There were a whole bunch of channels that were coming in that were blocked because they're pay channels. So the free-to-air doesn't apply for that. So, yep, it's going to be an adventure of, I mean, we're basically just sort of having to hunt and peck as far as finding the actual satellites. But the point of it all, we know it does function. Those channels are definitely coming in. And it is kind of cool to have this quite old, supposed to be analog-only satellite dish, and you can actually use it with the new satellites. So it's cool on that side.
Plus, it'll give our Roblox overlords something to watch TV with later on when they get around to that. All right, well, so that was a good update. So basically, not worth it.
I wouldn't be installing a 10-foot dish somewhere outside my apartment just for that. Let's put it that way.
And when you finally do buy a house with a home theater, you're not going to have like some monster like SETI looking dish in your backyard.
I really don't think so. I might put up something like a Mohu Sky antenna and try to catch the terrestrial broadcasts,
Yeah.
but I won't be going after the satellites in space. It's a little bit more than I personally would like to do.
All right. Well, before we address Gary, let's go on to Leighton. Leighton. Last week we discussed Leighton's setup. It's what? It's a.
I couldn't tell if Gary actually got mad like a week ago. I'm pretty sure it was all in jest and he was joking. But he was like, yeah, I had an update for you, but I'm not going to tell you till next week.
All right, anyways, before we get to Gary, we discussed Leighton's setup last week. It's a small room, 12 foot by 11.5 by 10. And he has two SBS PS12 NSDs, those are older subs. So the ones before the 2000s. Yeah. He does have some acoustic panels on the ceiling. He took our advice and just turned Pioneer's MCACC off. I repositioned a couple of acoustic panels, and he much prefers the sound now. We posted his updated pictures on Facebook, and he found a spot in the left rear corner, like I said I saw in his room, where he might be able to, it's like the nose knows, I could sniff it out. Put a sub right there. Where he might be able to put one of his subs. That will allow him to have one sub in the left rear corner and one sub in the right front corner. Yay! So he's going to try that out, but he would like us to, very slowly, go, not so slowly that we bump Gary, but slowly, go over the procedure for making sure that his bass is sounding as good as it can and is blended perfectly with the speakers. He's concerned with how should you set the phase on the subwoofer with this diagonally opposite placement. How should he go about setting the crossovers to his speakers? Won't having a subwoofer in that left rear corner right next to a sofa make the bass sound exaggerated? Okay.
All good concerns.
All good concerns. All right, so you put your subs in the corners. Let's just start right there, all right?
Yep.
So what I do before I run any room correction or anything, and he's not using the room correction, but let's say he was going to, okay? Maybe he will want to after this, I don't know. So
won't do anything to his subs anyway.
That's true, but he's so anyways, it's somebody else. So turn on one sub. Set the sub on the control panel of your receiver. Set the sub output level to +3 dB. Is that right? That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Turn on one sub. Change the volume on the knob until your SPL meter at your seat reads 75. Okay? Turn that sub off.
This would be going into your speaker levels menu inside of your receiver and going to the subwoofer and adjusting its trim level.
The trim levels on all the speakers will be the same one. You just have to cycle over until you get the subwoofer one. Just keeps playing that.
That way it'll play a nice pink noise test tone coming out of the subwoofer.
Yeah, like that.
Or in the case of the sub.
Yeah, the sub will sound like that.
Yeah.
So and you just get that until you get to 75 dB, right? You play with the volume on your sub until you get to 75 dB. Turn that sub off. Go to the other sub. Turn that sub off. Same thing. Okay? So now that sub's on playing 75 dB. The other sub's on playing 75 dB or off. But they were both calibrated to 75 dB. Now turn them both on. Watch your little needle go from 75 to 78-ish. Go to your remote control for your receiver and turn the trim level down until it's probably at 0, but it might be +0.5 or -0.5 or +1 or -1. Somewhere in there. Till it says about 75 on your little SPL meter. Your subs are now level matched. Okay? That means the one next to your chair is going to be quieter. The volume would be lower than the one further away from your chair. So that jumps us right over to won't having a subwoofer in that left rear corner right next to the sofa make the bass sound exaggerated? No. Bass is omnidirectional. Okay? And as Rob is about to tell you, he can reach over and touch one of his subs, and when only one is playing, he can obviously tell where it's coming from. But when he puts both of his subs on, like magic, they disappear into the room. Like magic.
It is honestly still, to this day, difficult to believe. Because your eyes are telling you there's a subwoofer right there to my left and one right there to my right, and I can reach out an arm and touch one, and yet, when they're both playing and they're nicely level matched, you cannot tell that they're right there beside my seats. It seems uncanny, it seems impossible, but it totally, totally works. So you will see, Leighton.
That's how that's going to work. Now, Rob's going to tell you about the sweep thing to set up the crossovers for your speakers. You say it better than I do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, just to mention his question about where the phase be set. 0. Set it to 0 on both of them.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Sorry.
Set it to 0. Yeah, there shouldn't be any playing of the phase this time, because the whole idea of having them in this, midpoint of the front wall and back wall, midpoint of the two side walls, or diagonally opposite corners, the whole point of that is that they're acting in unison. They're acting essentially as one sort of phantom subwoofer. So they should be in phase with each other. The idea is that they're all pumping out and pumping back in at the same time as each other, and evenly distributing bass sound waves all throughout your room, and you're only ever hearing reflections. The bass sound waves are way too long for you ever to hear direct sound waves from the subs, so you're only hearing reflections, and it's nice and even and smooth, so in phase with each other. If you want to know where to set the distance for your subwoofer inside of your receiver, it kind of doesn't matter. You can basically pick the spot that's equidistant between the two subs, and then take your distance from that spot to your seat, but it kind of doesn't matter. The only time it might matter is when you're dealing with this crossover stuff. So let's get to that, the crossover between your subwoofer and your speakers. If you want to really get into it, I can do that, and I can try to do that slowly, because I think that's what he was asking about. But honestly, the point of having your subwoofers positioned like this is to make it so that they play nice and linearly and evenly and smoothly, pretty much up as high as the subwoofers will play and pretty much as low as the subwoofers will play. That's the whole idea. The whole idea is to be able to cross over from your speakers to that pair of optimally placed subwoofers anywhere that you want, and the subwoofers will take over and provide you nice linear bass. So assuming that your speakers can at least play down to 80 hertz, it's very safe in this type of setup to just set your crossovers for all your speakers to 80 hertz and pretty much be done with it at that point. But if you want to make really, really short, the way you can do it is physically disconnect all but one speaker. So only one speaker is now physically connected to your AV receiver with speaker wire. You're going to get one of the bass sweeps from audiocheck.net is the site I always recommend. Get yourself a nice sweep that starts at about 200 hertz and goes all the way down to, you don't have to go down to 20 hertz because your speakers are definitely not playing down there, so you can go 200 hertz down to 30 hertz or something like that. Make yourself a nice sweep that does that. And now you're going to go ahead and play it. Now, if you're wondering how do I do this for my surround speakers, most AV receivers have some kind of mode called like all channel stereo or all mono or something like that. The idea is just to be able to get that sweet tone.
7-channel stereo too is often.
Yeah, 7-channel stereo or party mode or whole house mode or something along those lines. It's just something that puts the same signal out of every single speaker. So that's how you can make your surround speaker or your center speaker or whatever play this sweep tone. But you're going to go ahead and play that sweep tone. Remember, only one speaker right now is physically connected, and you're just going to go ahead and listen. You're going to go ahead and listen to just that speaker. Your subs aren't even on. None of your other speakers are on. It's just that one speaker, and you're going to go ahead and listen and try and locate the frequency where it starts to roll off or where it starts to sound uneven. The first thing you might notice away from linearity might be a hump. That might be the first thing you notice that isn't a nice linear sound in the sweep. It actually gets louder at some point, and you don't want that either. So one of the nice things on audiocheck.net, when you make your bass sweep, there's a little check mark there that says mark. And if you click that little check mark that says mark, then every 10 hertz that it goes down, it'll make a little squelch sound. It'll make a little tick sound. So you can count the number of ticks that you've gone down in the sweep, and that'll tell you what frequency you're at. It's one way to identify how far you've gotten. So once you've identified how low your speakers can play before there's some anomaly, they start to get quieter, they start to get louder, they just start to sound a bit up and down, uneven, you want to set your crossover above that point. So if they start sounding a little bit uneven at 60 hertz, make sure your crossover is set at least 70 or maybe 80 hertz. If they play nicely all the way down to 50 or 40 hertz, you can go ahead and set your crossover at 60 or 70 hertz. But you want to set your crossover above the point where your speakers start to sound wonky. Now you can go back, you can turn your subwoofers back on, play that whole sweep again through that one speaker and make sure you get a nice even blend, and it really should. It really should sound like a nice, even, seamless, you can't tell where your speaker ends and your subwoofers begin, and it should sound like that in every seat, because that's the whole point of positioning your subwoofers that way. Then it's rinse and repeat with every other speaker. So that is the procedure if you really want to get into it. Or you can probably just play it pretty safe and just set them all at 80. It'll probably work.
You lost just about everybody at unplug all your speakers. It's like,
I know.
That's not happening.
You know what? I think Leighton's the sort of guy who might be willing to do that. He kind of seems and looks that way from his pictures and how much he's been willing to do that room already.
Looks that way from his pictures. Oh, his room looks that way, or he does? What is a person that with unplugged speakers look like?
No, I'm judging him by his room.
Okay. All right. Matthew has some follow-up questions about his electrostatic speakers. This guy I forgot about. My bad. I apologize, Matthew. Thank you for reminding me, because believe me, it wasn't at all. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I forgot about you, and I apologize for that. He's been experimenting with Room EQ Wizard. That's the free program that you can use with Mini DSP, which is the little DSP thingy that you can use for your home theater. Well, you can use for any speaker you want. Most people use it for their subwoofers. He's tried using the room simulation feature in the current beta release. This simulates having two subwoofers at the midpoints of his front and rear walls, and it seemed to generate the flattest response. Previously, he had positioned his two subwoofers by doing the subwoofer crawl for one subwoofer to begin with, then doing the subwoofer crawl for the second time, the second subwoofer, while the first subwoofer was already positioned. He tried locating his subwoofers at the wall midpoints instead, and his measured results show some small dips and some comb filtering in the high frequencies coming from the speakers, but overall, it seems to have pretty flat frequency response now. And that's exactly what we've been saying, which is you don't have to crawl for bass if you can put your subs in the best places where we already know it's going to be the best places. That's midpoints of walls, and if you can't do the midpoint of opposing walls, then opposing corners. If you can't do that, then as close as you can to opposing whatever. Kind of the way to go with that. So,
yeah.
All right.
Or just visualizing what would make the most even distribution of bass sound waves throughout your room, not having it lopsided with, two of them on one side, like Leighton previously had. I did want to mention a little bit about this room simulation thing that Room EQ Wizard has now, because what they're asking you to do is, set up the dimensions of your room, and it pretty much looks like it can only handle a rectangle. It doesn't look like there's any way of inputting an oddly shaped room. And then it kind of asks you to how absorptive the materials in your room are, and I'm not sure how people would really figure that out. I'm sure it's got default values in there for things like drywall, but this is a simulation. This is not going to give you 100% predictive results, and I would definitely only use it to try and predict subwoofer placement, because trying to predict what the speakers are going to do, it says right in the Room EQ Wizard help files that they're assuming that the sound source is omnidirectional. And I can definitely tell you most speakers are not omnidirectional.
You would know.
Subwoofers are. Yeah.
You would know if they were omnidirectional.
Yeah, so, this really is about subwoofer positioning. That's what the simulation is for. So if you're seeing some weird results, if you input, I've got my speakers here and here, and it gives you some odd results, especially in the high frequencies, I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into that simulated result, because likely your speakers aren't dispersing that way, and likely you have other things in the room that you couldn't enter into the simulation. Yeah. It's pretty much just for subs.
All right, so after extensive listening, he's concluded that he reinvented the wheel. He concluded that his Martin Logan ESL speakers, these are electrostatic speakers, have a very small sweet spot. Yes, they do. That's kind of part of the draw. His setup is purely for music. There is no display. So he'd like to know if we think adding a third ESL center speaker would be an improvement over the Phantom center image he has right now. That only works for the primary listening position. Okay, no. Okay, and let's just go on, and then we'll explain why. No.
Okay.
And then number 3, expanding on that idea, what would we think of adding front wide speakers to his setup? Also, no. Okay. Let's go about it this way. It's almost an apt analogy. It's pretty close. If you had open back speakers, like headphones, open back headphones, where it lets it lets air in and out, and people outside can hear what you're hearing, and you can hear stuff from outside. and you thought, oh, I wish I had a more spacious sound. Putting another set of headphones, like slightly offset, on top of that headphone, do you think that that would help? Because that's sort of what you kind of would be doing by adding more. The whole point of electrostats is that they have this immensely clear, crystal clear, amazing sound that's really good for like one, maybe two people. Okay, max. Okay, that's the problem with with electrostatic speakers. That's traditionally been the problem. Okay, but that's also the draw. The draw is they have this amazing sound. I mean, you really can't get it any other way than with an electrostat. Okay. That being said, adding a center channel, like I have been in the Martin Logan. I think it was the Martin Logan one. They have the ones that fold out from the walls, right? Those wall ones.
That's Magnapan, I know for sure.
Magnapans.
That
That
are like
was
even
one.
motorized.
Yeah, the motorized one. I've
all,
seen
yeah.
those. I've been in a demo with those motorized ones.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, they're great for home theater. Absolutely not. No, they're not. They're not great for home theater. Like, oh, we have a center channel that folds out and everything. It doesn't matter. So now what you have is you have a great stereo image coming from two speakers, right? Now you've got another center channel that's now beaming directly at you, hopefully some completely different information, because God forbid it interact with the other thing, because then it just messes up your stereo image that you had that was so perfect. And then you have speakers from the sides that are beaming at you like freaking laser beams anyways. So what Clint and I did, because Clint was in this demo with me, is we walked across the room, as the demo was going on. Just walked across the room. All these speakers playing, and you just walk in and out of good and bad audio. You know what I mean? Just you walk in, you go, oh, that sounds pretty. Oh, that doesn't sound good. Oh, that sounds. Oh, no. You know what I mean?
Little areas of focus.
Little areas of focus. I mean, it wasn't like night and day. I mean, it was
Right.
I mean, but you could definitely hear, and you're going to end up with more speakers pointed at the exact same spot, and it's either going to make things sound really amazing for a surround sound experience, but still just for you, or it's going to mess up what you got. And I have a feeling it's going to mess up what you got, dude. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, this is a bit tricky. I mean, if you have several seats that you do really care about, I'm kind of wondering. This sounds like a pretty dedicated setup. I'm betting it's often just him listening in
Right.
the primary seat, in which case they're going to sound great. I mean, the other thing is I doubt he bought these by accident. I doubt he just stumbled into buying Martin Logan ESL speakers. He very likely at least demoed them, if didn't audition them in his own home, at least demoed them in a store and really liked the way they sounded and bought them as a result. And when you're really drawn to that sound that they have, one of the reasons they sound that way is because they have such narrow dispersion. It's because there is almost no sidewall reflection. They are a true dipole. There's just as much sound coming out the back of the speaker as there is out the front, and that means directly to the side there's a null. They're completely 100% out of phase, and they cancel each other out. So that first reflection that would normally exist on your side wall is pretty much gone. There's hardly anything there. There's really no sound energy going out there. Putting front wide speakers there at those first reflection points and having them create sound, which is, by the way, going to be simulated sound. The only way you could do this is with Audyssey DSX processing or DTS Neo X processing. There is no discrete front wide information in any of the music. It's simulating it. Putting back in those first reflections likely will make you go, wow, that is not the sound that first drew me to these electrostatic speakers. That's pretty unlikely. So as much as I am a fan of front wide speakers, I like the effect that they have in a large surround sound setup. I highly doubt it's going to give you the results that you want if you were drawn to that type of sound. The center, if you've got a wider seating area and you're worried about the other people who are listening with you and you want them to have a stable center image, that is the only way you're going to get it. That's why center channels exist, is so that it's locked to that center position. It's also much more important when it's video and you want to make sure that voices are always coming from the screen and not seeming to move over to the left or the right speaker. So yeah, honestly, I'm in agreement with Tom. I don't really think you'd get the results you're hoping for, but I definitely wouldn't recommend the front wides in this case. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. You keep cutting out, which is going to make this video very interesting for people to watch.
Oh,
But
I see.
anyhow,
Okay.
yeah. So
I'm sure the audio version will be all right.
yes, down at www.avergrant.com. All right, Gary.
Okay.
We'll get right to you. Monty wants to know
Ah.
which NAS device Rob uses. What NAS, network attached storage, what are you using for your media center, and would you recommend it, or what would you recommend, Rob?
Indeed, yes. So I am using Synology brand NAS units, 4-bay units. The exact model numbers I have are the DS411J and DS413J. Same unit, they just updated it over the years. So these can hold 4 hard drives each, and they just connect through a gigabit Ethernet connection to your router. And I definitely recommend them. First of all, they're about the cheapest 4-bay units you can find. And to me, a 4-bay unit makes a lot of sense because the ones that hold more than 4 hard drives get way more expensive, seemingly way too quickly. And the ones that only hold 2 hard drives, if you bought 2 of them, and because you ended up needing 4 hard drives, that would end up being more expensive than just buying this 4-bay one. So to me, it's the sweet spot in terms of price. Synologies are about the least expensive. Like the Drobo units that compete are quite a bit more expensive. And then there's others from D-Link and stuff like that, which are fine, but Synology is still about the least expensive. And they're stable, they run well. About my only complaint is that they get lots of updates. It's automatic, but they get lots of updates. They always seem to have an update coming out. But they're really cool. They have a lot of apps that actually run on the NAS itself. You can turn it into an iTunes server. You can turn it into a Plex server. You can serve up video to a dedicated app that Synology puts out there for iPhone and Android if you want to watch your content that way. So you don't have to have a computer on in your house. It can serve up all your media just on its own. It's low power. It doesn't use a lot of electricity. So totally recommend them. 100%.
There you go. Just so that Gary doesn't just continue to start skipping straight to the end of the podcast to hear our answers. Gary wants to know, last week we discussed the notion of overdamping, which is putting a bunch of absorption in a listening room to kill all the reflections, so that you only hear the speaker. Gary would like to know, in technical terms, what an audio engineer might measure in order to determine whether a room has too much or too little acoustic damping. I don't think they would, in technical terms, measure. I mean, I think they probably could come up with some sort of thing, but I think most audio engineers are going to walk in a room and listen and go, this doesn't sound right. And then look around and go, oh, wow, there's way too much damping in here. Or go, yeah, oh yeah, this room's too bright. I honestly think that's how they do it. I don't think that there's any sort of they don't put a microphone and go, we need more damping, because of this. They could do like a clap test with an echo thing to see how much reverberation's going on in the room. But over damping would be what? That there's none, and then they go, okay, now we need more. I mean, that's not really how it kind of works. I think it's more of like a, yep, that's too much, or
Well,
nope,
I mean, the
that's
thing
enough.
is, damping isn't completely linear in terms of which frequencies it affects.
That's true as well, yeah.
You know,
Depending on how thick your panels are and where they're placed and stuff like that can make a big difference as to which frequencies it's grabbing altogether.
Yeah, so if there were a measurement, I mean, what you'd be looking for in technical terms would be time domain measurements. So these would be your waterfall graph. The proper name for it is your spectral decay graph, or your impulse and decay graph. So you're looking for the time domain measurement graphs if you're using a program like Room EQ Wizard or some other measurement program. And what you're looking for really is even uniform decay times across all the frequencies. Ideally, that's what we would have. So ideally, you put out a little chirp at any given frequency, and the time it takes for that chirp to decay within the room, because if you have a room and it has no damping in it and it's all hard reflective walls, that sound is going to echo and bounce around your room for a given amount of time. So what you want is for all frequencies to decay at about the same rate. That would be the ideal. So if a room is overdamped, it would be overdamped for certain frequencies. So certain frequencies would die out really, really quickly while other ones still reflect around the room. So that would be a case of overdamping for a specific frequency, or underdamping would be, whatever given frequency is ringing around the room much longer than all the other ones. So that would be what you'd be looking at.
Yeah, no one's doing that. They just look around the room and go, that's too much. I swear, that's what they're doing. So, the good question though, Gary. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I really don't think it's something that's technical on their part. That just I think these, especially an audio engineer, they're so used to being in these specific environments that they're just going to go, that doesn't sound right, and then they'll figure out why, and that's it. All right, Jason T over on Facebook. Jason lives in Australia. He's actually the guy who gave me the mee goreng. Mee goreng is a Malaysian dish. It's like a spicy stir-fried noodle dish. He gave me like his grandfather's recipe or something like that. Kicks ass. Everyone loves it when I make it. It is so good. It is literally my favorite, like my second, third, maybe third favorite thing to make, and often it's my favorite thing to make if I haven't made it in a while, because it's so amazing. When I get it, I'm just like, oh, I'm going to pay for this tomorrow. But it is so good. Like, my parents complain about it. They're like, don't make me goreng again for a while. I'm like, why? They're like, it hurts us. I'm like, oh, okay. But it's true, because it starts with you make your own sambal, right? With sambal is like a spicy. It's just new Thai. It's dried Thai bird chilies with shrimp, like a shrimp paste stuff. Smells awful, but it tastes good when you cook it with stuff. Anyways, Jason gave me that recipe, and I can't thank him enough for that. So thank you. And he's got a new baby, so congratulations on that. He asked to say hi to Dina and Liz, and we will. I mean, in our own way. But now he's got a baby in the house, though. Late night movie sessions with the full surround system are out. You'd think so. I will tell you from personal experience that the person who can't sleep when you listen late at night is your wife. It has nothing to do with your baby. Your baby will not wake up. At least my babies didn't, and some of them are very light sleepers. But when the baby goes down, the baby's down. It's your wife that's the problem. That being said, I double dog dare you to tell her that. Tom said you were the problem. Yeah, Tom's in America. Come get me. Anyways, generally speaking, that's not much of an issue. The baby sleeps through all this stuff. But I understand your concern. So he wants to get some headphones, and he'd like them to be wireless. He's considering the Sennheiser RS-180s, but like to know if we have any other recommendations and whether the headphones that come with our own Dolby Digital DTS and headphone processing are worth it. Okay, so I did a little bit of research. I know probably Rob did some more because, yeah, that's Rob. Anyways, the RS-180s are a heavily recommended headphone for the wireless crowd. We over at Audioholics have not really done any reviews of the Dolby Digital and DTS stuff, and the stuff that we did, the surround headphones that we did that had multiple drivers in it, weren't really that effective in getting that surround sound experience. So I would shy away from anything like that. I will let you make your recommendation first, because I think your recommendation is actually more of what he wants.
Okay, yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, first of all, yeah, the Sennheiser RS series is a 160, 170, 180. They definitely always end up at the top of every wireless speaker recommendation list. They are using a new technology now. It's called Clear. It's a K-L-E-E-R, because of course it had to be spelled that way. But it is a new technology. I mean, it's 5.8 gigahertz transmission. It's not quite the same as just your standard broad range frequency skipping radio frequency transmission that used to be prone to more interference. So this is a more solid signal. There's less interference. I'm still not the hugest fan of wireless headphones because you can never completely get away from there being a noise floor. There's always going to be a little bit of a hiss, but I am hypercritical of that stuff. And most people, if what you're wanting to do is watch TV and movies at night, that amount of little bit of background noise is not going to bother you to the point that you'd give it up. So yeah, I don't have any problem at all with that choice, but I did want to mention there's a company called Astro Gaming, and a lot of times they don't end up in these wireless headphone shootouts because people aren't looking at gaming headsets. They're usually looking for ones that call themselves home theater headphones or something like that. Astro Gaming has been doing wireless gaming headsets for a while. Currently, they're only offering one set of headphones that have the wireless technology in it. It's their highest end one, which are $300 for the whole system. So it is expensive. That's their A50s. However, they're really, really good. I have firsthand experience with it in terms of their wireless transmission. It's very solid. They're using the Clear thing too, so it's not like it's a unique thing that they're doing there. But the wireless works well, and they have the Dolby Digital decoding built into their wireless transmitter with Dolby headphone. And honestly, when it's done properly, as it is with the Astro Gaming ones, it sounds pretty decent. I have to hand it to them. It sounds pretty decent, and it works well. I don't know if he's a gamer. If he's a gamer, I would totally recommend these in a heartbeat, because it also has the microphone built right in, so it's totally convenient. It's all there in one thing. It works with any of the systems that are out right now, so it's really convenient. They sound good, and yeah, the surround processing on those ones works well. But overall, I wouldn't go really searching for having its own Dolby Digital decoding. If you just send it a stereo signal, that's normally the way I'd recommend
That's
listening to
what I would
headphones.
do too. I honestly, my first thought was, why wireless? Why does it have to be wireless? Why? If there is any way for you just to buy extension for a decent set of headphones, do that. Do that. Everybody's gonna be asleep anyways, and you could just go put them away so that nobody trips over any cables, right? And just plug it into your AV receiver, because for the same amount of money that you're gonna spend, you can get yourself some really good headphones with a really long cable, and you're gonna be just fine. To me, that makes more sense than this wireless. Now, if there's a reason you want wireless, far be it for me to say don't have them. Rob's suggestion, your 180s, the RS 180s, those are probably the ones that if you had asked me to go pick one, those are probably the one that I would have chosen for you based on the research that I did and the fact that I've had lots of experience with Sennheiser, and they're pretty good universally, as long as you're not in the low end range, but which is that's everybody, not just Sennheiser. So yeah, I probably would have recommended those anyways. The Astro Gaming one sounds pretty good, but $300 is steep. For $300, you can get yourself a really nice set of headphones. Probably you could even get Sennheisers, and with a long cable, and never think twice about it. So speaking of headphones, Oppo sent me their new ones. What are they called?
Was it the new ones?
The new ones, the $600 to $700 ones.
That'd be PM2s, yeah.
PM2s, that's it. The PM ones I already reviewed. The PM2s are coming, and I'm going to review those too. So, yay me! So,
fun time.
Yeah. So, look forward to that. Gary. Oh, no, we already did Gary.
Now it'll be all Gary from here on out.
We should do an all Gary episode. We should have Gary on. Does Gary ever come to our after things?
He's never come to one of the hangout parties afterwards. Nope.
All right. So after our recording sessions, we have hangout parties, which is just a normal hangout group, which you get up to 10 people in the group. So 8 people plus me and Rob and I, and we do that every time. So this time we might be a little bit early, but generally speaking, it starts around 11 o'clock on Mondays.
I don't think it's gonna be early. We still got more stuff to cover.
We're changing pretty soon, though, right? You have to change your schedule.
The very beginning of September, we will be moving to Tuesday nights.
All right, Tuesday nights coming up. Check Facebook and Facebook for that. Facebook.
Yep.
In the podcast. Nathan on Facebook, Nathan W. wants to know, we've mentioned the Audyssey Dynamic EQ quite a bit, and that's the one where as you change the volume, it adjusts the bass so that you can still hear it even at lower volumes, and that when you turn it higher, it adjusts the bass again so that it still stays flat. The frequency response, I say, the dynamic EQ maintains the same frequency response over volume, whereas dynamic volume maintains the same volume over time. Basically, is the difference. So, anyways,
it adjusts some other things too, in addition to the bass, sound effects and things like that.
Yeah. It adjusts to everything, but the bass is what he's talking about. But he has a Yamaha AV receiver. That does not have dynamic EQ. He's run YPOW, the room correction, Yamaha's room correction system, and tends to listen with the master volume at around minus 15 dB. That's loud. Generally speaking, that's pretty hefty. Can you just turn? It depends on the speakers, I suppose, in this room. But can you just turn up his subwoofer's volume to compensate? If so, by how much? Answer: no, because it's not just the subwoofer. It's a lot of things, and really, it's not at negative 15 dB. It's down at negative 40 dB. When you're going from negative 15 to negative 40, there's changes that have to happen to your frequency response so that you are still hearing as flat as possible. That's because your ear is less and more sensitive at different volumes to different frequencies. So as the volume changes, Audyssey knows which things to bump up and which things to cut as you're changing these volumes going up and down. And that's what it's doing. You can't just go to your volume knob. That being said, yeah, man, you can do whatever the heck you want to your subwoofer volume. We're not the boss of you. But it's not going to be the same thing as what dynamic EQ is. It's not just a gain change on the subwoofer.
Yeah, because it's when you turn up the volume dial on your subwoofer or change its trim level, that is affecting all frequencies that are coming out of your subwoofer, and it isn't that. Yeah, that's what happening in dynamic EQ. It's a curve, so it's frequency dependent. So it isn't the same as just turning up all the sounds that are coming out of your sub.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if what you're finding is, okay, I ran wipeout, it set all my levels. If I set it to 0 dB, everything sounds nice and even. I turn it down to the volume I like, and my sub sounds a little weaker than I would like it to. By all means,
Goose
turn
it
it up a few dB. That's totally fine. But
goose that bad boy. That's what I say. No one's gonna.
a lot of people do.
I do it. Especially if I'm listening to it. If I have people over and I'm like, oh, let's watch Pacific Rim. Bump up the subwoofer, bump up the subwoofer, bump up the subwoofer. Kick. Anyways, Gaylen, his Onkyo TX SR005 had a failing HDMI board. Onkyo offered him a discount on a replacement AV receiver since the HDMI board for the small no longer available for an easy repair. His previous options were TX818, NR818, or the TX NR828. We recommended sticking with the 818 because it has the better Audyssey. It's Multi-EQ XT32, while the 828 dropped that all the way down to the regular Multi-EQ. Onkyo now says, ooh, you like the Multi-EQ XT32? Well, we got that on the 929, and for $600, you can get the 929. Now, he would have to also ship back his broken SR805 at his own expense, which would probably be, what, like $50?
Yeah,
like
he says
$100?
yeah, about $50, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like to know if the 929 is a good choice or whether he could possibly do any better for about $650 even from a different brand. No. The 929's got like, what, 9 amps in it? And
it's got 9 amps in it. It is capable of running 11 speakers.
Yeah.
You have to add an external 2-channel amp, but it can run 11 speakers simultaneously if you
yeah,
want
XT32, it's got tons, it's got wireless inside, a bunch of other stuff. For $650, you're not going to touch that. That being said, do you need any of that, or do you really just looking for the XT32? Because if you don't need 9 amps and wireless and 11 channels and all the stuff that Rob says that you need, and I say that you don't, then yes, you do.
I call myself crazy for having it.
818 is probably, especially if they'll give it to you for free, save that get yourself another SVS sub, man. Come on, $650 you're saving. For my money, I'd stick with the 818.
Yeah, this is really a matter of, I mean, if you go to their website, OnkyoUSA.com, really look through the feature set of the 929. The thing is, I'm not 100% sure if the 818 model is still available. I mean, at this point, it is a 3-year-old model, so it's possible that they just don't have any stock of that one anymore. And they're like, well, you can take the 828 or the 929. If that's the case, I would definitely favor the 929. But if the 818 is still available, yeah, I'd definitely be taking a strong look at that one because chances are it has all the features you want. It's a very likely scenario. But yeah, if the 818 is no longer available, you're not gonna find something better for $650, even from accessories for less or anything like that, than the 929 in terms of features, what it can do and all that. So I hope that's a clear answer.
I think it's pretty clear.
Okay.
Stop trying to spend money. This is the wrong path. I swear, we're awful. We're like, oh yeah, you can buy as many subs as you want, but everything else is off limits. All right. none of that stuff. You don't need that crap. Just subs. Lots of subs. No speakers on your ceiling. Subs. Maybe
subs on your ceiling? Subs on your ceiling. That you would go for.
That I would go for. I actually think that's a fantastic idea because you could put it look like a vent. You could do an in-ceiling thing. Like a little. Anyways, okay. Bob G. He recently upgraded his surround speakers to ones that timbre matches front, left, center, right speakers, and was surprised by the results. For a lot of content, it didn't make much of a difference. No. But for certain effects and music, having the timbre match perfectly really enhances enjoyment. Now he's considering adding either front wides. Ooh, he's got the bug. He's got the Rob bug. He's got we just get cages. Either front wides or front heights, or maybe even both. He has a Denon AVR X4000, yay, and is already using the surround back speaker, so we'd have to add an external amplifier and select which 9 speakers are playing at any given time. He'd like to know if we think it's worth the hassle of buying more speakers, an external amp, and running more speaker wire. We think that, at least I think, I don't know what Rob thinks. Well, I know Rob thinks it's a fantastic idea because he likes other people to be crazy as him. I think that you've got the bug, and if that's the case, then nothing I say is going to make you not buy these speakers. So I think you should buy the speakers. I think that heights, on all accounts that I've heard, and even with, I guess if you don't have a big screen that really you feel like the sound, like the voices are all coming from below and that everything's too low, the heights aren't really going to make that much of a difference to you. If you're not already like bothered by something, don't worry about it. The wides, on the other hand, as Rob has described, and I talked about in my article, you damp the first reflection point so that you're killing the first reflections coming from your main speakers. Then you put the wides where they tell you to put the wides, and you're basically recreating them in a way that allows that first reflection not to mess up things like it can do if it's not controlled properly. I think that can make a difference. I think that can make a difference. I haven't. Rob's actually heard it, so I'm really going off of Rob more than anything else. But I'm actually going to set up wide speakers when I get my 4000 in here. I've got the extra speakers, and I'm going to give it a go and just try them out and see what it sounds like.
Yeah, my first thought is I'm not sure how his surrounds and his surround back speakers are, integrated into a system. I don't know. They might be in walls or they might be in ceilings or something like that. But if either of those are just bookshelf speakers, or towers for that matter, move them to the front wide positions and give it a go. Because then you haven't spent anything. It's just a trial. I mean, yeah, it's going to cost you some time and some hassle of moving some speaker wires around, but at least you haven't spent any money out of pocket just to give it
take those surround backs and move them to the front wides and then move them to the front highs and then, see what it sounds like.
Yeah, so since he said he just replaced his surround speakers with ones that timbre match his fronts, I'm guessing those are movable. Positionable speakers, so I would take those surrounds, put them in the front wide positions, and give it a try. So as far as which ones between front heights and front wides, if you had to make a choice, I would 100% vote for front wides over front heights. I really haven't found a whole lot of value in the front height speakers. That's me. I don't know. Maybe things can be
like
better.
I said, the people that I know that have had them and haven't liked them, it's always because they have a front projection system and they feel like it makes the front sound seem to match the size of the screen, which is it's just something that you may or may not be bothered by. I know I've never really thought, boy, I wish I had a speaker that was. I never really thought those thoughts. But that being said, it could very well be that he puts them up there and goes, oh yeah, that's way better. I know Clint liked the presence channels when he first got them for Yamaha. He thought those made a difference, and again, he had a big screen that was. Up pretty high, so he was looking up at it, and I think that's what made the difference.
Yeah, I will definitely say as far as using the front wide speakers, it does depend what listening mode you set things to, because with the X4000 he has the option, he has Audyssey DSX, that's one way of doing it, and the other one is DTS NeoX, and DTS NeoX has 3 different modes. It has a movie mode, a music mode, and a game mode, and all of them make use of the front wide speakers in slightly different ways. So, generally I've found, since there's only 3 Blu-ray titles in all of existence that actually have front-wide channels encoded into the soundtrack.
Are any of them any good?
Dredd 3D is good.
I love Dredd.
Yeah.
I love that movie so much. Every time it's on, I have to watch it. And it's on Netflix. I always have a hard time not watching it. I just want to say, the guy, I can't believe it's the same guy that plays McCoy, right? And he's like, I've seen him in other stuff where he's kind of a wuss. He's on Dredd. He's like, he doesn't even take the helmet off. I'm like, you're so scary. I love you. So awesome.
And the other one people might actually entertain buying is Expendables 2, which is not a great movie, but does have some fun sound.
Yeah, that movie. Awful.
So the sound in it is well done. But anyway, outside of that, and the other one is Step Up Revolution, which I know no one but me will ever purchase. I got it.
I would certainly hope that someone gave it to you, or you got it at a garage sale, or some sort of discount.
I went looking for DTS NeoX 11.1 soundtracks, and those are the only 3 that exist. They all came from Lionsgate, and then Lionsgate said, I don't think that increased our sales 1 iota by having DTS NeoX 11.1 soundtracks on them. So anyway,
Atmos.
Outside of those...
Atmos. Sorry. Right. Wait a second.
There will be way more Atmos titles than DTS NeoX titles.
Yeah, and we'll see how much it increases their sales. But okay. Go on.
Yeah, so outside of those, you are simulating, you are creating front wide channels. It's just matrixing those from the existing information. I happen to prefer the DTS Neo X game mode. Even though it's called game, I don't use it for games. I use it for pretty much everything. The reason I like it is because the game mode attempts to make every single speaker in your system sound as discrete as possible. And I like that. I like the way that that ends up sounding. All it does is it takes sounds that are halfway between your surround speaker and your front speaker and says, hey, if it's halfway between those, that ought to go into the front wide speaker. And that's where it goes, and it sounds pretty darn good when it does that. The movie mode tends to sort of add some reverberation in the surround channels. It tries to make your room sound bigger. And the music mode tends to just sort of spread the front sound stage out. So it's sort of smearing the sound across all 5 speakers in the front of your room. And I'm not a huge fan of that. So I end up liking the game mode from DTS Neo X the most. Yeah, so if you're going to go away, I would vote for front wides. And I would definitely trying it out first, because I think you're probably able.
All right, that's everybody. I did want to say that this week I had a chance to go into Sam's a couple of times because we smoked an inordinate amount of meat this weekend. Now I have I was like I haven't cooked anything for a while because my parents live here and they do all the cooking and it's driving me nuts. So we're gonna go buy a bunch of dead animals and smoke them. So that's what we did, and so I ended up going back and forth to Sam's a number of times to take home more dead animals. And as I was walking through, I realized that they had gotten one of those curved screens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those curved Samsungs. I think it was a Samsung. I might be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure it's a Samsung, right? So there's a 4K one as a flat, and now there's a curved one sitting right next to it. It took me a while to realize that one was also 4K because it was called Ultra UHD or something like that. I was like, what? You know, I was looking for the 4K on it, and it wasn't on there. But that one was curved, and then next to it was just a 1080p. Okay, so the two 4Ks, the first 4K, the flat one had a specific 4K content on it. Okay. Specific, you know, so it was like those static pictures that they slowly pan across, which looked awful because everything was all dynamic mode and it was a bunch of distortion going on. And the curved one though had the same thing as the other 1080p ones, right? And I'm pretty sure it was a 4K set. I mean, I was pretty sure it was supposed to be a 4K set, but you couldn't really tell because first of all, the brightness that was up was so high that there was all sorts of distortion. There was also it was like the text, like the blue, like there was like the blue text on whites at Sam's, blue text on white background. The white was sort of like bleeding into the blue. You know, and there was like a little bit of, you know, that you could see the edge enhancement going on places, and it looked actually I think for some people it looked better than the one next to it because the one next to it was darker, but the one that was darker actually had more accurate colors and didn't have as much distortion stuff going on. And this curved one, $2,100. The one sitting right next to it, showing the exact same content that a professional, that literally was at fingertip range from 50-inch, 55-inch. I don't know what it was, 50-inch. I'm gonna say 50-inch, right? Fingertip range from. Could not tell the difference between the curved one and the other one. Both showing the same content. I mean, I could not tell you which one was 4K. I probably would have said the flat one because it looked better, because the curved one was stupid anyways, because it was distorted because of the curve too. $2,100 for the curved one, $800, I don't know what it was, under $900 for the other one. I could never fathom somebody going, oh yeah, I'm totally buying that curved one. No one's doing that. No one is doing that. No one is buying those. No, I mean, not for that reason. Okay? People online, stuff like, and they make it look like that curve, like when you see, like the pictures they show of that stuff, it's like, oh, it's curved. Look how curved. It is not that curved. It's barely curved. It's just curved enough to be annoying, as far as I'm concerned. It's
and make it hard to mount on a wall, if not impossible.
Just curved enough where you go, oh, look at, no lines are straight anymore on that thing. You know, everything towards the edge sort of bends out. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, or up or down or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, on that tip, the news last week was that, I mean, LG appears to be the only company that's still making large format OLED televisions.
It's a TV that never, it's like a format that came and went, nobody even noticed.
I know. You know, Sony and Panasonic are apparently teaming back up, but only for, you know, mobile screens and that. So Samsung, you know, they pulled theirs off the market basically. So LG, I mean, hey, if LG can capture the entire OLED market, however small that might be, I mean, kudos to them if they're the only game in town. But last year, the first one that came out, 55 inches, which seems to be the only size they make, last year came out, $15,000 was the original retail price, and then that ended up dropping down to 11 and then 9 and then 8 or something like that. And they had curved and flat versions. Now, they announced there last week, Year 2, 55-inch LG OLED. This is still 1080p resolution. It's not up to 4K yet, but $3,500. $3,500. I mean, that is a. Can you imagine if you bought one for $15,000 last year when it was new, and now second year $3,500?
Can you imagine if you bought one for $3,500 right now, and
True.
what you're going to think how stupid you are next year when they put out a 4K one for $2,000?
It's not quite as bad as that $15,000 one, but it's curved, and that's the only one they're making. So what is going on? Like, why?
Who is in charge? Who is in charge, and why aren't they listening to us? That's what I want to know.
I want to know if there's some production advantage to making it curved or something. It makes no sense why they're doing it.
I swear it's a marketing. I think it's too late. These guys are making these stuff way ahead of time, and
yeah.
All right, we gotta go. Are we done?
Do you want to hit any recommendations real quick? Or
okay, well, both of these were pretty good. Rob sent me both of these. The Marvel and DC movie release dates through 2020 in a handy graph. As you get past, 2017, it gets untitled movie.
I don't think you even have to get that far.
Is it really? So 16?
Yes. My prediction is that untitled Marvel movie in November of 2018 will probably be better than untitled DC movie in 2019. I mean, that's my prediction anyway.
The funny part is Marvel's got all these movies coming out, and there's one a year from DC. You're like, oh, you guys chugging along. And the thing is, it's you just put out one, and it still sucks so bad. I tried to watch Man of Steel the other day. I was like, oh god! I got 3/4 of the way through it, and I woke up, and went, what happened? What happened? I never fall asleep during movies. I'm like, it's a Superman movie.
Noisy as heck too.
How do you fall asleep during a Superman movie? It's so bad. The other one is, if you're a GoPro fan, there's a new Microsoft has developed a way to, and it's really interesting, to smooth out those videos, specifically, especially if you're fast motioning them, 10 times speed. And it's pretty interesting. You can see how they're doing it, and it's not just dropping frames. They're overlaying them and doing all sorts of processing to it. Yeah, you can see there's one demo they show where they're doing it on a person who's rock climbing, which I found fascinating. But the rock climbing guy, and you can see how sometimes some of the processing is a little bit off, and the rock seems to morph a little bit. But the fact that they're doing any of that at all is amazing. And the stuff that it's not quite as hard as that was, because there's a lot of really intricate textures in that, and a lot of movement going on at the same time. The stuff that's more normal, it looks really, really good. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I was very impressed by it. And when it is something like, when you watch the ones where someone's just mounted a GoPro onto their bike helmet or something like that, and they're just riding down the street, and you see how shaky the original footage is, every little bump and everything like that, and then they show this smoothed out one, it's like, whoa, that is pretty darn cool. I mean, it really looks like they just put it on a Steadicam and rolled it along a Dolby.
I missed the very beginning of it because I was watching something else at the same time. Can we use this yet, or is this just something they've developed and they're going to give it to us once they figure out a way to charge us for it?
Yeah, it doesn't appear
we have to buy a Surface Pro
yet.
Only available on Surface Pro.
You have to buy 20 Zunes, get them out of our warehouses.
Okay, the one I will recommend here, let me see here if I can find it. It's on it.
Was it the link you sent me to the binaural recording?
Yeah, there's a binaural recording on a website called Q Sound Labs. It's called qsound.com, but it's Q Sound Labs. Anyways, it's a virtual barber shop, and it's pretty long. But you put on it with your headphones, and it's supposed to. They kind of tell you what they're doing, and they're kind of walking around you and doing some haircut stuff. And it's pretty kind of cool.
Why the horrible fake Italian accents?
Oh, I thought that was I thought it was Mexican at first. I thought they were going for some sort of south of the border thing. And it's I don't know what they were doing. I don't know what that whole thing was about. But somebody should.
It kind of made me made me cringe. I was
I
like,
know. Like
oh
someone, I was
man.
like, I'm a little offended right now, but I'm not sure who I'm offended for. But I'm pretty sure I'm offended. Whatever's going on in this, but it's free, and you can just press play, and you can hear it, and it's kind of cool. So I don't know.
So I will just quickly mention before we go, Ray Coronado got in touch with us via Google Plus during the course of this thing, and going back to the whole heat thing in the Integra processor, he says it's the video processor in there. According to him, that gets super duper hot and heats up the entire thing.
What
So
does he know?
I'll take it from him. He's he's only a professional calibrator, and this is what he does for a living.
I still like the amps. Anyways, it doesn't really make any difference because it's Onkyo. If it doesn't get hot, it doesn't work. Everybody knows that. It's true. It's a true story. All right. Once again, you can contact us at Tom at AV Rant, Rob at AV Rant. For Twitter, you can get Rob at First Reflect. It's all one word, at First Reflect, or me at avrant_Tom. Come to the website and comment. That's www.avrant.com, and go to the web. To Facebook.com/AVRantPodcast. Kind of did all that out of order. It got me all messed up. Those of you that are watching us live, we will be having our after party in about 10 minutes or so. So pretty close to 11. But so hang around for that. You can, and those of you that want to see us live, you can see us record live and realize that we really don't edit this at all. This is just the way it comes out. And those of you that want to know what Rob said all those times he cut out, you're going to have to download the podcast. So there you go. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Antry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.